Morning. We gather in this sacred space, made more sacred in this moment by the presence and attention of each and every one of us. I now invite those of us gathered in the sanctuary to greet our live stream participants by turning and waving at the camera in the front right side of the sanctuary. For those in the sanctuary, let's now take a moment to greet one another. Morning again. Welcome to the Winchester Unitarian Society. My name is Ivan Correa, and I will be your worship associate this morning. In the spirit of the theme of the month, paying attention, we are distracted constantly by the hard work of living. Mary Oliver had a suggestion. She said, noticing things like a swallow or the golden air of summer was a good first step. However, she also notes that attention without feeling is only a report, and openness and empathy is necessary if attention is to matter. Our services at the Winchester Unitarian Society are designed to help us with this. Here we create space for rituals, hymns, and readings to help us meditate, even for a moment, on the transcendent, the sublime, the other. At this gathering, we welcome all people and affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Guided by justice, equity, and compassion, we draw inspiration from many sources and encourage everyone to explore their own spiritual path while learning together. Today, we are fortunate in having, once again, Reverend Mary Margaret Earl, who, by the way, had a really tough morning. So please, be gentle with her. She had to take an Uber all the way from Rhode Island, and she sat in the back seat of the car, and she was not feeling well. So I hope she's recovered by now. But she has an amazing background, which is what I always love looking up. For over a decade, Reverend Mary Margaret has led the Unitarian Universalist urban ministry, championing racial justice and sparking connections in Roxbury. Before that, she dedicated 10 years to supporting Rhode Island's homeless community, earning not just awards, but real-life hero status. She's a recipient of the Heroes of Faith Award and the Courage of Conscience Award. She's a leader in interfaith work, a tireless advocate for the voiceless, both human and animal, and someone who puts her vegan values into actions daily. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Mary Margaret, who proves you can change the world with courage, compassion, and maybe a little tofu. After the service, there will be light refreshments in the Sims room back behind the sanctuary. This is an opportunity to connect and deepen our sense of community. I now have several announcements, so please bear with me. I guess there was an error in the order of service and some notes were left out. But what John reminded me to let you know is that in honor of Women's History Month, all of the composers in today's service are women. Yeah. And I'd like to invite, beginning with Terrell first, and then followed by Nicole. Terrell will talk to us a little bit about the search committee.
Good morning. I'm Terrell Levering, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Ministerial Search Committee. As many of you saw in the email that went out on Tuesday, we have concluded our search process for this year, and we have not matched with a new settled minister. We know this is disappointing news, especially in light of all the work that we have done as a congregation, the B4 workshop, the focus group sessions, and the congregational survey. The search team spent many hours together working to present our congregation in the most honest light possible, an active intellectual community that values connection, social justice, and the deep bonds among our members. We carefully evaluated the ministers who expressed interest in our congregation and extensively interviewed our pre-candidates. Ultimately, we have found no match this year. The search for our settled minister will continue. We are still in conversation with the Standing Committee and the UUA about the next steps, and we are deeply grateful that Reverend Seth has committed to remaining with us throughout the coming year. Whatever form this search takes next, it will build on everything this community has already given to it. Thank you for your patience, your trust, and your continued support.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Casasilla, and I am the parent of a WUSSY Gear and a member of the Racial Justice Group. Racial Justice Group and the Social Action Outreach Committee would like to invite you to our third presentation on Palestine today after the service. The talk will focus on how personal trauma and/or trauma of generations before us impact how we interact with political conflicts of all kinds. Our speaker, Dr. Karen Abdul, has a psychiatry and wellness practice here in Winchester. She is a colleague and longtime friend of mine. Dr. Abdul has extensive experience studying refugee and intergenerational trauma. Dr. Abdul's talk will help each of us understand how inherited experiences drive our perceptions and how understanding this can promote healing. Please join us after the service in the Mickelson Room. Please note we do have childcare available, and if you'd like to use that, please see Claire McNeil in the Sims room after. Thank you.
Thank you, Terrell and Nicole. I now invite you to open your hearts and mind to the spirit of worship as Reverend Mary Margaret shares the invocation.
I read that the insect kingdom is collapsing, that the dense eastern woods have been beaten back and defeated. The lawns, endless seas of lawn, are sprayed and pressed into obedience, all real buzzing, bursting, impertinent life stilled into a stretch of green carpet. The bulldozers clear the trees and fill in the ponds, and the frogs fall silent. Lights along the highway, lights in backyards, lights everywhere, blind nighttime scavengers, confused migrating birds. The moths seek the moon and exhaust themselves at street lamps. Fireflies flicker out. I read that the living world is flickering out. And so I rise in the morning, I fill the bird bath with fresh water. I rise in the morning and take a slender shovel and make space for a handful of goldenrod. I let the milkweed grow and open and surprise me with her purple flowers, her glorious blossoms, when once I did not even know that milkweed blooms eventually if you let her. Yesterday I watched a swallowtail butterfly dance on the bee balm. There is no way to describe it except as a dance of joy. I read that maybe the world will collapse. I rise in the morning, and like the leaf that curves at the edge from despair into song, I plant something, a handful of goldenrod. I do sing. This is how I save myself. This is how we save ourselves. We sing. We plant something. We love something. We rise in the morning and begin again.
I now invite Alice Levering to come up and light the chalice. As we prepare to light our chalice, let us pause and be present in this moment. May this flame remind us to pay attention, not just to the world around us, but to the inner stirrings of our hearts. May our awareness help us see beauty in every detail, hear the truth in every spoken word, and care for each other with intention. Thank you, Alice. Now, if you could please rise in body or in spirit to sing hymn number 1, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door.
I invite those who are young and young at heart to come forward for a story. Morning, everybody. Everyone, Otto's here, and Olsen didn't know it until just now. Woohoo! Okay, today in church. Okay, Olsen, I need you to keep your body to yourself now. Thank you. So today in church and also in some of our RE classes, we'll be talking about how to stay grounded when things get hard. Does anyone know what we mean when we say stay grounded? Yes, Ira. Calm. Not like when you do something wrong and your parents lock you in your room for 3 days. That's pretty bad, right? Okay, so grounded, right, staying calm. I think the second thing was a joke. I know that Ira's parents would never do such a thing. They're not cruel. Ringing endorsement. So anyway, there's a thing about being grounded that is about being calm, right? So keeping yourself in control of yourself, right? So staying mindful of ourselves and our feelings rather than spinning out of control with our bodies or our thoughts or anything, any version of that, okay? There are some upsetting things that are happening right now in our country and in the world, and it can make us really upset, right? It's very upsetting things. It's sad, we can be angry, we can be frustrated, you name it. And it can be hard to stay grounded when we hear about them or talk about them with others. Now, I wish I had the solution to all the problems in the world. If I did, I would fix it up, spit spot, just like that. They'd all be gone. And I think you spit spot Mary Poppins. Thank you for getting the reference. So I would do everything I could, as I know you would, if we had that power, right? But we do not have that power. What do we have power over? Wilson? Our actions, ourselves. We have power over ourselves, right? And so when we hear these upsetting things and when we talk about upsetting things and we start to feel those really big feelings inside of us, we can control ourselves. And I'm going to tell you one way to help us calm those big feelings and thoughts inside, okay? And the way is to use a starfish. So this is a way that we can remain mindful we can remain mindful and when our feelings get big. And it starts by putting our hands just like this. Can everybody do that? Spread your fingers out nice and wide, okay? And grown-ups, please join along, all right? So put one hand in front of you and spread out the fingers. It looks like what? A starfish, right. You gotta get really close. Okay. All right, so what you can do, I'm gonna demonstrate first because I don't want us all doing it at a different time. So what you're going to do when I tell you to do it, not now, I'm just showing you. You're gonna start by putting one finger of your other hand up and you're gonna bring it down to the bottom of your thumb on the outside. And when you bring your finger up, you're going to breathe in. And you're going to take the whole time it takes and go a little bit slowly. Don't go too fast, because if you go too fast, then you're breathing really fast and you could, faint. And I don't want you to do that. Okay, so you go up, breathe in, and you go down, breathe out. You go up, breathe in, you go down, breathe out. And we're going to do that for every finger on our hand. Okay, is everybody ready to start? Ready? Remember, go slow. Go ahead, trace your finger. Okay. Do you feel any more calm than you did before? Did that work for you? Yeah. So when you're feeling big feelings, which just means you're a human being. There's nothing wrong with big feelings, right? When you're feeling them, though, and you want to stay in control, breathing in and breathing out with your starfish to help you is one really good way to stay in control. So practice that this week. If you start to get some big feelings, give it a try. All right, and then next week, come and tell me about it, okay? All right. I'd like to invite the grown-ups to sing the children and teachers to religious education. The words are in your order of service.
This is the time in our service where we will settle into meditation, the kindling of the light, a time of silence, and then a centering hymn. I also want to share that we'll do something special during this time. You saw in your order of service a slip of paper that says, "The strength at the center of me." And this is an invitation to think about a very challenging time in your life and what it was, what that strength at the center of you was that got you through it. And reflect on that as we enter together a time of meditation, our quiet time, and write it down in a word or two or a sentence. And during the musical interlude after the reading, they'll be collected. My colleague Maggie will come through and collect them. So if you can pass them down to the center edges to make it a little easier for Maggie, that would be so helpful. So it's to reflect on the strength at the center of you that got you through a hard time. And I invite us to again breathe in and enter, as we exhale, a time of quiet meditation in words, and then we'll share our joys and sorrows. Holy Presence, in these troubled times, we lift up gratitude for the day that we have been given. We thank you for this moment to rest in community, to take a moment away from ordinary time and create a window of sacred time. We lift up the world's tremendous suffering, violence, hunger, displacement, fear. And we ask that our hearts be guided, that our lives be guided to do our part to bring hope and peace. And we lift up prayer that all people and all beings have opportunity to savor life and beauty and goodness and safety. As we lift these things up, we also come together for a kindling of the light. This is the time in our service when we light a candle for a joy or a sorrow that is sitting on our heart. For those in the sanctuary, if you would like a candle brought to you, please raise your hand. And with full hearts, we gather together in a moment of silence, after which we will join together, remaining seated with our centering hymn, number 86, in the gray hymnal, a time of silence. As I begin the reading, I just call your attention again to thinking about a word that or a sentence that describes the strength at your center, and they will be collected during the musical interlude following the reading and some shared during the sermon. Our reading is from the book, The Demon of Unrest by Eric Larson, a book that is about the events and tensions leading up to the start of the Civil War. As a bit of background to the book and the reading that I'm going to share, Senator Seward of New York, an abolitionist who would later become Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State before Lincoln took office, gave a conciliatory speech to calm the rising anger of the slaveholding states which were threatening secession. He assured them that he would vote for a constitutional amendment that Congress would not abolish enslavement where it already existed. His wife, also an abolitionist, and other allies were deeply disappointed in his effort to appease the riled up South. And of course, his reassurances did not succeed. Here's our reading. What Senator Seward perhaps did not truly understand was that at this point in the crisis, the thing that the South most resented was the inalterable fact that the North, like the rest of the modern world, condemned slavery as a fundamental evil. In so doing, abolitionists and their allies impugned the honor of the entire Southern white race. For if slavery was indeed evil, then the South itself was evil, and its echelons of gentlemen, called the chivalry, were nothing more than moral felons. Yet the chivalry had persuaded themselves of a different reality. Slavery was a positive good. It was endorsed by the Bible and by anthropological observation. Even two famed Northern anthropologists, Louis Agassiz and Charles Morton, both of Harvard no less, had proclaimed on the basis of purportedly scientific research that the black race was not only inferior, but a different species altogether. If slavery was good, then slave owners were good, and anyone who said otherwise abraded their honor, something no Southerner could forgive. So ends our reading. Thank you for that lovely song. Thank you. And thank you to my colleague Maggie, who's here with me today and is trying to multitask and collect your slips. So thank you for helping her with your many-aisled sanctuary. And Maggie also will be in a social hour after the service for those who have questions about the work of the urban ministry. It is good to return to Winchester and to be with you again this year. I want to thank my colleague, Reverend Seth Carrier-Ladd, for welcoming me back. And I also want to thank Ivan for being such a very thoughtful worship coordinator. I really appreciate his presence this morning. Thank you. The delegates to the urban ministry from Winchester are Patty Cameron and Gordon McIntosh. They help connect us by sharing information back and forth, being conduits between Winchester and the urban ministry in Roxbury, and I thank them for their very important service. One of the reasons I really enjoy coming here and being here in person is just it gives me an opportunity to thank people who support the work of the urban ministry from Winchester. So I want to just take a moment to do that. First, I want to thank the Winchester Social Action Committee, which has year after year supported our work, including our after-school program for high school students. We are very grateful for that support. Thank you. There are friends among you, including Sarah and Bill Delano, Woody Wood, Maggie Russell, Roy Cummings, Martha Whirler, who support our work, and those who actually stay connected to us who were in Winchester and have moved on. Jake Dacey, Jesse Ruth McLeod, Kate and Andy Ebbett still stay connected to us, which we are so grateful for. I do need to lift up some special friends. We have, in the urban ministries history, we have some real pillars of support who lift our spirits, who are just wonderful champions, and I just appreciate Peter and Vicki Coccoluto for being those pillars. Yes, we can applaud Peter and Vicki. We always feel their steadfast support, and we are very grateful for that. And I also want to do a special shout out. Did anybody here attend the amazing concert at the Urban Ministry last Sunday? Yes. All right, so can we just shout out John Kramer and his incredible talent? What an honor, what a privilege, what a timely moment. There's people so full of emotion, and I thank you so much for sharing your talent with us, John. Thank you. So it is good to be here with you in this moment, which is in our nation's history a very hard and intense moment, right? Every day we are drowning in this cascade of headlines that frighten us and frustrate us and anger us. Who here can feel like some mornings you are a cat chasing a laser beam, trying to keep track of all of it, right? Or who feels exhausted in the morning before you even finish your cup of coffee, right? I feel you. So this morning, we are going to focus on how we resist being drawn into that chaos, about how we stay grounded in the midst of it. And we begin by, again, breathing in and out, because we can never do that too much, too often. And we're going to begin with a story. In March of 1861, Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated, and he became president when the nation was at the brink. At the heart of the stress fracture between the North and the South was enslavement. This conflict was intensifying as Southern slaveholders feared that Lincoln would end their dominion. For years, the dispute over enslavement had simmered. The South, no longer in step with the rest of a world that had deemed it immoral, protected the institution ferociously. Political solutions like the Missouri Compromise had tenuously held the nation together, but all that was coming undone with Lincoln's unlikely election. This gangly, rough-hewn president had a deep and abiding faith in the Constitution of our young country and in the central importance of its cohesion, and he waited into the center of a fiery cauldron. One of the first letters to be passed to him after he assumed the presidency was about the crisis at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. This moment, we now know, was the spark that finally ignited the Civil War. Charleston was a hub for slave trading, and South Carolina the first state to secede. The politics of the slaveholding state were driven by the wishes of a group of wealthy enslavers known as the chivalry. Eric Larson, in his book, The Demon of Unrest, told of events leading up to the attack on Fort Sumter. Thank you, Maggie. And he described the chivalry thus, quote, "The chivalry gave themselves military titles and favored elaborate uniforms. Their Southern Carolina standard bearer, novelist William Gilmore Simms, wrote 82 novels in which chivalry and honor were central themes. Chivalry, to him, meant gallantry, stimulated by courage, warmed by enthusiasm, and refined by courtesy. The chivalry valued honor above all human traits and would happily kill to sustain it," end quote. Their fierce commitment to enslavement was propelled by economics and power, yes, but also something even deeper: self-image. Southern enslavers needed to see enslavement as good because they wanted to be seen as good. This was an electric nerve running through the conflict. Again, from the reading, quote, "The thing the South most resented," Larson wrote, "was the inalterable fact that the North, like the rest of the modern world, condemned slavery as a fundamental evil. In so doing, abolitionists and their allies impugned the honor of the entire Southern white race. For if slavery was indeed evil, then the South itself was evil, and its echelons of gentlemen, the chivalry, were nothing more than moral felons," end quote. And this, Larson wrote, the South could not forgive. And it was in this charged atmosphere that Fort Sumter stood. When South Carolina seceded, its leaders deemed it an insult to their new government that federal troops remained there. They demanded surrender. To hold the fort, the U.S. troops needed food and supplies dwindled. The Confederate forces at their gates swelled. At stake was the nation, a continued fragile truce between North and South. At stake was war. In this fraught moment, Abraham Lincoln received the letter about Fort Sumter. The question before him was whether to fight, to send supplies, or to evacuate, each choice leading to a reaction of national proportion. He received it, and he immediately paused. He pondered. Abraham Lincoln pondered. With tensions rising, with Confederate representatives knocking at his door, with streams of job seekers crowding into the White House, Lincoln considered. He stayed grounded, and he considered. He asked his newly appointed cabinet members to weigh in. When most said abandon Fort Sumter, he continued pondering. Days passed, tensions rose, and Abraham Lincoln stood in the midst of it, considering the surest path forward. We know the ending of the story. In the short term, Sumter was lost. In the longer term, the Union held. And in the much longer term, we are still grappling with the legacy of enslavement even into today. When I read the story, I was struck by three things. One, the parallels with today's national landscapes. Two, Lincoln's ability to resist chaos and think clearly. And 3, how challenging that is for us to do today with this 24-hour news cycle. Today we hear echoes of that pre-Civil War time, the national polarization, the drive by a few elites at the very top to grab and keep power, the anger, the high stakes. But there's also now the pace of it, news that is not delivered to us on horseback, but by rapid fire social media. We live in a maelstrom of distressing news, and maybe that's the point of it, to distract and exhaust us. And so there is no more important matter before us than staying grounded in the midst of it. Staying grounded so we can prioritize, think clearly, and act from the strength at the center of ourselves. Our first task is bringing ourselves back to the center of ourselves. So we call on prayer, meditation, music, laughter. This last one, Abraham Lincoln used liberally in his storytelling. We may not feel that we have time for that with democracy at risk, but staying grounded is our first task of resistance. When we feel overwhelmed, we are called to slow down, step back, and breathe. Not to avoid what's happening by no means, but to wisely respond to it. And when the dust of the chaos settles, we then can stay grounded through our heads, in our hearts, and in our gut. First, we stay grounded in our heads in what we know. Over the past 6 years, since the killing of George Floyd, many of us began waking up to the legacy of enslavement. Statistics on health, wealth, and educational disparities evidenced this legacy. According to the Boston Indicators Project, in 2022, white U.S. households had about 6 times the wealth of Black households. In Massachusetts, Black and Hispanic residents are much likelier to rely on Medicaid than whites. And in Boston, life expectancy in Roxbury, where I work, an historically Black neighborhood, is 23 years less than it is 1 mile away in White Back Bay. In the face of this knowledge, Unitarian Universalists hung Black Lives Matter banners. We examined the history that we have inherited, in which criminal justice, healthcare, and housing systems conspire against people of color. We held vigils, called for diversity, looked inward, and began talking more seriously about reparations. At the Urban Ministry in 2020, we made commitments for racial reckoning, promising to interrogate the history of First Church Roxbury, the congregation whose historic meeting house we inherited and now inhabit. Since then, we've worked in partnership with the African American community around us, searching archives for the names of people enslaved by white congregants, tracing their lives and their lineage to name and honor them. In 2020, we committed to a vision in which all people have equitable access to resources and the ability to shape the future. And so we deepened our commitment to our after-school program, supporting Boston high school students of color in becoming the city's next leaders in reaching their dreams. They face greater barriers than their white suburban peers. More students of color attend high poverty schools with fewer resources. Wealth disparities mean Black students have to borrow more money to go to college and then carry more debt into adulthood. And once they graduate, they continue to face inequity. According to the Center for Economic and Social Justice at Roxbury Community College, white workers in Greater Boston with a high school diploma make $2 more per hour than people of color with an associate's degree. We work persistently and insistently to ensure that these students have opportunity to thrive despite the barriers that they have inherited. And now comes this national groundswell effort to turn back time, to cover over Black history, to halt progress in achieving basic fairness. Recently, an activist in Greater Boston spoke up how it's become more difficult in this chaos to get people to focus on racial justice because there are just so many issues going on, and yes, there are. But the work that we all took up to address the racist fissures in our nation is no less relevant today than it was in 2020. Indeed, it is at the heart of what's going on. According to the Boston Indicators Project, the federal budget cuts will further increase racial disparities. Quote, by cutting supports like Medicaid and SNAP and reshaping student aid, this bill not only worsens income inequality today, but also sets in motion dynamics that will widen wealth disparities tomorrow, especially along racial lines, end quote. The end of the Civil War was not an end to racism. Pro-slavery Americans surrendered but were not transformed, and racism has shape-shifted through the last century, through lynchings and redlinings and mass incarceration into today and this landscape. Racism may not be the only thread running through today's struggle for the soul of our country, but it is most certainly a thick and tenacious one. And so we ground ourselves in the work that we have already undertaken, in what we've learned, and in what we know, and we stay the course. Second, we ground ourselves in our hearts by who we know and love. We ground ourselves in community. We center ourselves in real relationships, in real time, in how we're gathering here together this morning in this faith community. Here is the power to create, to transform, to lift up. Consider how within this faith community we are called forward, that we call one another forward, that we offer one another opportunities for activism and lend encouragement. Who here has been to a protest or written a letter to an elected official or sent them a postcard or to a business or stopped shopping at a particular business or learned about a social justice issue because of Winchester, because of this faith community? A lot of hands, many of you. We do together what it would be much harder to do alone. Let us feel the energy that pulses here in this beloved circle, and let that ground us. And let us also widen the circle. In Greater Boston, we remain deeply segregated by race and by income. To be most fully and powerfully grounded in what is happening today, we need to be proximate to those who are most directly impacted by both inherited and generational inequity, and by the cuts to SNAP and healthcare for whom poverty is a daily reality. Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative speaks of the power of proximity. Quote, ultimately, he says, what we do to get proximate to those who are disfavored, what we do to change narratives, what we do to stay hopeful, what we do that is inconvenient and uncomfortable can sometimes be the most meaningful thing that we do, end quote. At the Urban Ministry, among our deepest values are partnership and proximity. We walk with Roxbury organizations and build connections. We listen to the Black community, which has a deep and lived experience in facing and overcoming oppression by weaponized government institutions, something that many of us are facing and fearing for the very first time. When we reach out beyond our mostly white and comfortable communities, we ground ourselves in the power of relationship. When we get proximate to the communities being directly impacted by the pain that is being doled out right now, then the crisis we are in moves from an idea and into our hearts, and we move with greater assurance and urgency. And 3, we ground ourselves in our gut, in knowing who we are. Many of us are afraid of what the future holds. I'm afraid. Single-handedly, we cannot control or predict what's to come. But every single one of us here has been through hard times, and we survived. For every one of us, there was a time when we were overwhelmed or full of sorrow, or we were lost, and it was hard to see the way out of it. But we found the way, and here we are. Every one of us has that glowing coal at our center that got us through. Eric Larson writes of Lincoln's Secretary of State, William Seward, in the early days of the new administration, when Seward tried to manipulate the new president about Fort Sumter in the midst of that cloud of stress. Seward, the more polished politician, was certain that he could push around this country lawyer, this man who'd suffered the early loss of his mother, whose father was barely literate, who grew up poor. What he did not recognize yet, Larson writes, is that there was steel in this Illinois lawyer. We have within us gifts of steel and light to bring to the times that we are in, and I'm going to share a few. The strength that we have at the center of us. My education. A nice hot bowl of soup, preferably split pea, usually has seen me through. The ability to reach out in love to those around me. Following my heart's conviction. My family and those closest to me keep me grounded. The joy of being helpful. Love for and from my family. Compassion. Resilience. Acceptance. Hope. And many more. These are just some of the strengths that are in this space right now. There is a cloud of chaos and hurt that is happening right now. But we have the power to resist by what we know, by our connections and our relationships, and by who we are, our own journeys. May we remember that we are enough. We are more than enough for the times that we are in. And may we keep walking forward together in faith. In the words of the Reverend William Barber, forward together, not one step back. And may it be so, and amen.
Today we share the plate with sewing opportunities, and I now invite the organization's founder, Fern Remedy Brown, to say a few words about the organization.
Dear friends, my name is Fern Remedy Brown, and I'm the Executive Director of the nonprofit Sewing Opportunities. I'd like to share some stories about women's strength and resilience in a remote, forgotten region of Guatemala, and how, against all odds, they have sown hope. My wife Ginny and I founded Sewing Opportunities in 2015. After our adopted daughter Maya asked to meet her biological mother, and we saw the conditions her family lived in. It was a deeply spiritual decision for me as the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, and for Ginny as a former Roman Catholic nun. Similar to the principles of the Winchester Unitarian Society, we wanted to live our values through service. Maya's biological mom, Olivia, lives in destitute poverty in the highlands of northeast Guatemala, a region with rocky, unfarmable land, minimal government resources, and a literacy rate of 15%. Families have earthen floors and no running water. Most speak only their indigenous language, Quechua. Through a needs assessment, we learned that families wanted a reliable food source. In March 2022, we began teaching high-yield greenhouse agriculture, working with a small Guatemalan team, a project manager, an agriculture engineer, an expert agriculture engineer, and a social worker. The greenhouses are resilient to heat and flooding and are easy to tend. We provided proprietary organic soil additives that enabled the greenhouses to produce 4 harvests per year of 10 different crops. The results surprised everyone. Families had enough to eat, and some women were able to sell surplus produce in the market. Since then, we've added 1 village per year. Many of the men in these villages had left to try to reach the U.S. and were never heard from again. The women are extraordinary. They lift heavy wood to build their own greenhouses and mentor one another. One told us, "You're giving us respect when no one else has. We're forgotten by the world." In 2025, upon request from school principals in the area, we added 2 public primary schools, the first in Guatemala to have agriculture in their curriculum. Students eat what they grow, so now have regular school lunches and are learning a trade that gives them a reason to stay in Guatemala and build lives in their own communities. Today we serve 4 villages and 6 schools. Our work has proven to be scalable and could potentially be replicated and throughout Guatemala and elsewhere in Latin America, combating poverty and allowing communities to flourish. Thank you so much. I'll be available during coffee hour to speak with you.
Our collection plate welcomes cash, checks, and you can donate electronically. Details are in your order of service and will be shared online. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received. If you could please join in the affirmation of shared ministry, that the words are in the order of service. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build a beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion with difference, and to embody transformative love. The words for the hymn are in your order of service, and it's going to be Woyaya.
Are enough. You are more than enough for the times that we are in. Go forth in courage and with hope. Amen.
if you could please join me in reading the words for extinguishing the chalice that are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The service is ended, but our life of service continues. Let's continue the conversation in the Sims room back there. I think there are some vegan dishes.